Well, hello, guys. We are running live from here. Excuse me, today. My Lord, I'm just having a hard time this morning. I don't know why. Give me just a second. Let me make sure I got this whole thing set up. I'm going to have to take off out of here. I just wanted to get this set up for you guys real quick so you guys could watch the what was being said, what his sentencing is going to be and what have you. So this is the penalty phase of the trial. And yeah, we're going to sit here and watch what happens. So at any rate, I got to get out of here. He can appeal. Yeah, Stacy. Every person has a right to appeal. They got to have grounds for appeal, but they make up grounds. Like he's going to do ineffectiveness of counsel, even though those are his friends. But this comes down to his life, and there's a lot of appeals that are going to over the next several years, a next 10, 20 years of appeals he's going to have. He'll have at his disposal. So those I do anticipate him doing. That's just part of the process. I would be appealing as well, whether I'm guilty or innocent. That's just how it's done. He's an attorney, so he's going to utilize every possible thing he can. Anyways, guys, I don't have a lot of time to debate this. I've got to get on the road. I will see you guys after the penalty phase. Hopefully I'll be able to pop on here and give you my final commentary before we close this case out. I just wanted to make sure that it was up and running for each and every one of you guys that wanted to see this. I will monitor this on my phone. God bless each and every one of you. It's a great day here in America. It's a great day that a powerful person like Alec Murdaugh is finally coming to justice after his years of victims. The victims in his wake are so massive, and it was so damaging. I'm surprised this man wasn't put behind jail for a long time, but it probably had something to do with the fact his family was so powerful for so long. So here we go, guys. As you can see, the clock is ticking. It should be about 25, 26 minutes before we start. So God bless you. I'm going to turn my camera and my mic off. Enjoy this, and I will be monitoring it. Please don't forget to message me with the final conclusion. I believe he's going to get life in prison without the possibility of parole. But I don't know what the sentencing guidelines are in South Carolina. We shall see. We do realize that the death penalty is off the table, which I think was a missed opportunity. I do believe this man is evil, and I think he deserves death. There is no other great person that deserves death like this man right here. So with that, I will speak to you guys soon. God bless each and every one of you, and we'll watch this and see how he's sentenced.
rise. Court is now in session. Judge Newman presiding. Be seated.
Good morning. Parties ready to proceed?
State's ready, Your Honor.
Bench is ready, Your Honor.
All right, from the state, Mr. Waters.
Thank you, Your Honor. We're obviously here in the sentencing for the state versus Richard Alexander Murdaugh. Your Honor, I have prepared the sentencing sheets signed up. If I can hand those up to the clerk. Your Honor, very quickly, the defendant has no prior record, and the state has no victim impact people who want to speak at this time. But I will address the court briefly. And I don't need, Your Honor, to repeat the evidence that Your Honor just heard for the past 6 weeks, but it is overwhelming. And it shows this man to be a cunning manipulator, a man who placed himself above all others, including his family. A man who violated the trust of so many, including his friends, his family, his partners, his profession, but most of all, Maggie and Paul. This is a very complicated situation, and I want to offer my condolences to the family that has suffered here. We have tried very hard to be respectful and sensitive regardless of what position any person took, because this family has suffered and they've had to suffer in the public eye. And I want to offer my condolences to this family. I want to offer it for Maggie and Paul and Mr. Randolph too, who I had the pleasure of working with on one occasion. But the reality remains is that despite all this attention, this case is about Maggie Murdaugh and Paul Murdaugh, and I'm so thankful that the jurors gave them a voice. You heard about Paul. Obviously, there was the boat case, but you also heard him described as a fun-loving young man, a person who loved life, a person who would do anything for his friends, for anyone. And he's cut down as he was just starting to live his life. You heard about Maggie. You heard how sweet she was. You heard that she was a girl's girl who adapted to the outdoorsman life of her sons, how much she loved her sister and her brother-in-law and their children. And she was cut down in the prime of her life. Both of them, like everyone else, was unaware of who he really was. No one who thought they knew this man, no one who thought they were close to this man knew who he really was. And Your Honor, that's chilling. And I've looked in his eyes, and he liked to stare me down as he would walk by me during this trial. And I could see the real Alex Murdaugh when he looked at me. The depravity, the callousness, the selfishness of these crimes are stunning. The lack of remorse and the effortless way in which he lies, including here sitting right over there in this witness stand. Your Honor, a man like that, a man like this man, should never be allowed to be among free law-abiding citizens again. And I would submit to you that the only just sentence here to give justice for Maggie and Paul is the maximum, and that would be 2 consecutive life sentences. Thank you, Your Honor.
You indicate that no victim would like to speak at this time. Would any victim like to speak at any time during these proceedings?
Your Honor, one of the things we did, and we did early on, obviously, as I just said, it's a very complicated situation, but we made the decision early on. We've had our victim advocate here who's been doing a wonderful job, regardless of the viewpoints of any individual family member, to provide aid and service to them, and we made that decision. I'm informed by our victim advocate that none of them wish to speak, the defense can certainly address that, but that's what I'm informed. But they certainly were offered the opportunity as is required. And I want to commend our victim advocate on the excellent job she did in handling this complex situation that we wanted to be sensitive to, because again, none of us are not mindful of the fact of the suffering of this family.
I noticed Sled Chief Mark Keel is here. Would you like to address the court on any matters, Chief?
No, sir. Just to say it again, very proud of our agents, the work they've done. I'm proud of the partnership that we've had with the Attorney General's office as we've had for many years. And again, we're here to see that justice is served, and we believe it has been.
Thank you. For the defense.
Your Honor, Mr. Griffin and I would have no comment. The defendant would like to address the court, though.
Mr. Murdaugh.
Good morning, Your Honor. I'm innocent. I would never hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never hurt my son, Pawpaw.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Anything further?
I don't think further comment is necessary, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Murdaugh, if you'll come before the court for sentencing. This has been perhaps one of the most troubling cases, not just for me as a judge, for the state, for the defense team, but for all of the citizens in this community, all the citizens in this state, and as we've seen based on the media coverage throughout the nation. You have a wife who's been killed, murdered, a son savagely murdered, a lawyer, a person from a respected family who has controlled justice in this community for over a century, a person whose grandfather's portrait hang at the back of the courthouse that I had to have ordered removed in order to ensure that a fair trial was had by both the state and the defense. And I've sat through the trial. Not only have I sat through the trial, but also as the presiding judge of the state grand jury, sat through and participated in the issuance of search warrants of various sorts, bond hearings, and have had to consider many things. And we have this case, and I'm also assigned to preside over 99 others, at least 99 other cases. Though testimony has come up regarding many of those other cases, I will not make any comment with regard to any other pending matter, as I have been assigned those cases as well. It's also particularly troubling, Mr. Murdaugh, because as a member of the legal community and a well-known member of the legal community, you've practiced law before me, and we've seen each other at various occasions throughout the years. And it was especially heartbreaking for me to see you go in the media from being a grieving father who lost a wife and a son to being the person indicted and convicted of killing them. And you've engaged in such duplicitous conduct here in the courtroom, here on the witness stand, and as established by the testimony throughout the time leading from the time of the indictment and prior to the indictment throughout the trial to this moment in time. Certainly, you have no obligation to say anything other than saying not guilty. And obviously, as appeals are probably expected or absolutely expected, I would not expect a confession of any kind. In fact, as I've presided over murder cases over the past 22 years, I have yet to find a defendant who could go there, who could go back to that moment in time when they decided to pull the trigger or to otherwise murder someone. I have not been able to get anyone, any defendant, even those who have confessed to being guilty, to go back and explain to me what happened at that moment in time when they opted to pull the trigger, when they opted to commit the most heinous crimes known to man. In this case, qualifies under our death penalty statute based on the statutory aggravating circumstances of 2 or more people being murdered by the defendant by one act or pursuant to one scheme or course of conduct. I don't question at all the decision of the state not to pursue the death penalty. But as I sit here in this courtroom and look around the many portraits of judges and other court officials and reflect on the fact that over the past century, your family, including you, have been prosecuting people here in this courtroom, and many have received the death penalty, probably for lesser conduct. Remind me of the expression you gave on the witness stand. Was it tangled?
Tangled web, we weave.
Oh, what tangled web we weave. What did you mean by that?
Meant when I lied, I continue to lie.
And the question is, when will it end? When will it end? And it's ended already for the jury because they've concluded that you continue to lie and lie throughout your testimony. And perhaps with all the throng of people here, they, for the most part, all believe, or 80, 90%, 99% believe that you continue to lie now when your statement of denial to the court. Perhaps you believe that it does not matter, that there's nothing that can mitigate a sentence given the crimes that were committed. You know, a notice of alibi was filed in this case by counsel in November, and we conducted a hearing, pretrial hearing, in which you claimed to have been someplace else at the time the crime was committed. Then, after all of the witnesses placed you at the scene of the crime, at the last minute, or last minutes or days, you switch courses and admitted to being there. And then that necessitated more lies and continued to lie. And I say, where will it end? It's already ended for many who have heard you and concluded that it'll never end. But within your own soul, you have to deal with that. And I know you have to see Paul and Maggie during the night times when you're attempting to go to sleep. I'm sure they come and visit you. I'm sure.
All day and every night.
Yeah, I'm sure. And they will continue to do so. And reflect on the last time they looked you in the eyes, as you looked the jury in the eyes. I don't know person who's always been such a gregarious, friendly person and cause your life to be tangled in such a web, such a situation that yours have spun into. And it's so unfortunate because you had such a lovely family of such friendly people, including you, and to go from that to this. You know, your license to practice law has been stripped away from you. You turned from lawyer to witness, and now have an opportunity to make your final appeal as an ex-lawyer. And it's it's really surprising that you're waiving this right at this time. And if you opt to do so, it's on you. You're not compelled to say anything, but you have the opportunity to do so.
Judge, I tell you again, I respect this court, but I'm innocent. I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my wife, Maggie, and I would never, under any circumstances, hurt my son, Paw.
Well, and it might not have been you. It might have been the monster you become when you take 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 opioid pills. Maybe you become another person. I've seen that before. The person standing before me was not the person who committed the crime, though it's the same individual. We'll leave that at that. Before announcing sentence on these cases, with regard to all of the other pending cases, are any of them here in Colleton, or I'm sure some of them are?
Yes, sir.
Half of them, or?
I don't have that in front of me, but there are a substantial number of charges here. There's some in Hampton, Orangeburg, Beaufort, Allendale. There may be others I'm not thinking of right now.
We might have worn out our welcome here in Colleton. they have been, and I'll take this opportunity to thank Sheriff Hill and all of the court officials and really everyone I've met and dealt with while here in Colleton County. Just been great. But without any delay, we're going to schedule some of the other matters. I know Mr. Harpootlian's scheduling is complicated, and you've sacrificed quite a bit to be able to be here defending Mr. Murdaugh, as well as the Attorney General's office, with all the other many things and obligations you have. And to be able to have the Attorney General here, Alan Wilson, for the period of time that he's devoted to being here along with everyone else, it's been quite a sacrifice. But there are other victims whose cases deserve to be heard. And this case has jumped some of those other cases, perhaps jumped it because of this case resulting in an assault on the integrity of the judicial system in our state, law enforcement in our state. Even during this trial, the law enforcement have been maligned for the past 5 or 6 weeks by one who had access to the wheels of justice, to be able to deflect the investigation. And as the evidence is pointed out in this case, the looming storm that Mr. Waters talked about, I can just imagine on that day, June 7th, when a lawyer is confronted and confesses to having stolen over $500,000 from a client. And he has a tiger like Mark Tinsley on his tail, pursuing discovery in the case involving the death of Mallory Beach. And having a father, for the most part, on his deathbed. I could imagine, or really can't imagine, but I know it had to have been quite a bit going through your mind on that day. But amazingly, to have you come and testify that it was just another ordinary day, that my wife and son and I were out just enjoying life. Not credible, not believable. You can convince yourself about it, but obviously you have the inability to convince anyone else about that. So if you made any such arguments as a lawyer, you would lose every case of that, like that. Cases you will never have an opportunity to argue anymore, except perhaps your own as you sit in the Department of Corrections. Anything further?
No, sir.
All right, Mr. Murdaugh, I sentence you to the State Department of Corrections on each of the murder indictments in the murder of your wife, Maggie Murdaugh. I sentence you for the term of the rest of your natural life for the murder of Paul Murdaugh, whom you probably love so much. I sentence you to prison for murdering him for the rest of your natural life. Those sentences will run consecutive. Under the statute involving possession of a weapon during a violent crime, there is no sentence where a life sentence is imposed on other indictments. That is the sentence of the court, and you are remanded to the State Department of Corrections. And officers may carry forth on the imposition. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
All right, there you go. A scathing rebuke from Judge Clifton Newman. You almost felt in his sentencing as he was speaking that this was personal for him, and it is, as watching another member of the legal community go down in such a way. He said this has been an extremely troubling case for the entire county, for the entire state. He said you have a beautiful wife and beautiful son that were cut down too early. He also talked about having to have the portrait of Alec Murdaugh's grandfather removed from the Colleton County Courthouse so that he could get
adjourn,
what he thought a fair trial. Let's listen
an
in
order
real
was
quick.
issued concerning maintaining the juror's identity being anonymous. That order was issued, and for the most part, it's been complied with, except for the jury leaving the courtroom yesterday, or not the jury, but the defendant leaving the courtroom while the jury is still seated. Protecting the identity of the jurors is certainly extremely important during the course of a trial to ensure that no one makes contact with the jury or attempts to influence the jury. Jurors have a right to continue that privacy beyond their jury service, but they're not obligated to do so. And it would not surprise me if jurors choose to come forward and to speak, and they're encouraged to do so if that is their desire. I have no problem whatsoever with the jurors unmasking themselves and speaking freely with the media, because they have undergone a life-changing experience as it relates to many of them. And some of them are here now, and I want them to know that should anyone attempt to harass them or annoy them, please let me know and I will address the issue. Secondly, there's a complaint now regarding the posting of autopsy photographs or photos that came from within the courtroom. It's based on the direction of the photographs. It did not come from the audience, it came somehow from within the well of the court. The parties have requested an investigation of that. I have my hands full doing my job, and I don't attempt to conduct any investigations beyond the conducting of a trial, but to the extent that law enforcement decides to review that, it will be the responsibility of law enforcement. Yes. And Of course, one of the reasons we've sought to seal graphic photos is because the parties have a right to privacy and a right to those matters not being publicly disclosed. If anyone has heard about the recent settlement that Kobe Bryant's, another sports analogy, Kobe Bryant's wife just made with Los Angeles County and others out there over certain disclosures of information involving the death of Kobe Bryant. Liability can be substantial, and it's a risk for the most part that's not worth taking. So we'll let everyone judge themselves accordingly with that regard. Aside from all that, our business is done here in Colleton County, and I get to use my gavel one or few times during this trial and order that court be adjourned. Sine die.
All right.
Judge Clifton Newman just remains so likable. You heard a bit of relief in his voice there as he said he got to use his gavel. Court is adjourned, and you could hear that. But 2 life sentences, not 1, but 2. And I would definitely call this a scathing sentencing from Judge Clifton Newman to somebody he formerly knew, formerly worked with. I also have to say, this is one of the first sentencing I've seen, and I've seen a lot of them, where there was talk back and forth between the judge and the defendant. But there was in this case. Now, a couple things that he said that really stuck with me. Judge Newman said, this qualifies as a death penalty case, 2 murders. They were aggravated. And he said, I have to think your family has prosecuted people in this county for about a century, and they have sent people to death for less. Pretty impactful statement. So then is the moment that he asks Alec Murdaugh to talk. He says, what was that you said in court again about a tangled web? What did you say? Well, Alec spoke up and he repeated himself, and he said, we're looking right now at Buster Murdaugh walking out. He has been here every day, steadfast with his girlfriend and also his aunt. I saw him walk in this morning. He was with JMM John Martin Murdaugh, who also was on the witness stand and testified. Today, John Marvin also with him walking out of the courtroom. Again, John Marvin taking the stand and Buster taking the stand as witnesses in this case. And both of them believe that Alec Murdaugh didn't do it. Of course, the judge and the jury felt very differently. But again, so Judge Newman was saying, what was that you said again about a tangled web? And Alec repeated, well, I lied and I had to continue to lie. And he said, Judge Newman said, yes. And then after you went up there, you continued to lie. And then you had to tell more lies because you were caught. Another poignant moment was the fact that he said, I know you have to see Paul and Maggie when you go to sleep at night. I'm sure they visit you in your sleep, and I hope you continue to see them and remember the last time you looked into their eyes. Whew! That was rough. Alec, of course, trying to twist that and said, oh, yes, Your Honor, I see them every day and every night. Then he went on and Alec said, I respect the court, but I would never hurt my wife, Maggie, or my son, Pawpaw. And then Judge Clifton Newman said, well, it may not have been you. And he took a dramatic pause. And I thought, oh, wait a minute, where is he going with this? And he said, because when you testify to taking 20, 30, or 40 opioid pills a day, it wasn't you. He said, I've seen that many times before where there's been a defendant standing in front of me and the person who committed that crime was a person who was on drugs and was not who they were. And then he said, listen, your story that June 7th was just an ordinary day, that you were fine, despite the fact that you had stolen $500,000 and your law firm was onto you for stealing $500,000, despite the fact that he called Mark Tinsley a tiger and said there was a tiger on you. And your father was dying. You testified that it was just a normal day for you. He said that was not credible and not believable. Okay, I want to bring in my friend, News 19's Sam Perez, who has been in the courtroom. Sam, I know she literally just walked up with us. You missed what I said, but I said that was a scathing sentencing speech from Judge Clifton Newman. What did you think?
It absolutely was. I think when he touched on his personal experience, having worked with Murdaugh, having seen Murdaugh in the courtroom, having known his family, Judge Newman said that, it was unfortunate, I think is the word he used, that his family was such friendly people, that Murdaugh himself was so friendly, to then now where they are with Murdaugh not only disbarred and losing his law license, but also now convicted of murdering his wife and son. I think Judge Newman really pointing out that personal connection he had, and he knew Murdaugh before he says he turned into a monster, likely because of those opioids he was abusing.
Something else he said that I thought it almost was like he was baiting Murdaugh or asking Murdaugh to explain it. He said, now I understand there will probably most certainly be an appeal, so you don't have to say anything. He said, but I have never had a defendant who has been convicted, found guilty, look at me and explain why they did it, what they were thinking. It was almost like he was goading him, like, go ahead, tell us what happened. Why did you snap? Why did you do this? What did you think of that moment?
No, I agree. And then what I thought was interesting is he said in all of his years, he doesn't know if he's ever seen a defendant be able to recall the moment that he pulled the trigger. And I think that was, a pretty powerful moment, just asking Murdaugh, like you said, almost goading him, not expecting him to necessarily admit any guilt, but really talking about that crucial moment where he pulled the trigger.
Last night we didn't see any emotion as the verdict was read. Guilty on all counts. He's guilty of murder of Maggie, guilty of the murder of Paul, and guilty of possession of a weapon during a violent crime. Absolutely no expression on his face. But I have to say, Sam, and I want to know what you think, I felt like I saw emotion in Alex's face as he was getting the scathing review from Judge Clifton Newman, somebody who is peer. And we know in this testimony that Alex's reputation means everything to him. Alex, the way he feels about himself, the way the community feels about him. So to be standing up there in handcuffs and ready to be led away and being convicted of murdering your wife and murdering your son, I definitely saw him grimacing. What did you think?
I agree. I think, as you mentioned, Judge Newman is, his peer, has worked with him before. So I think being convicted by a jury is one thing, but then having someone who you've worked with in the past, who on a relatively personal level, delivering that life sentence, I think is, powerful. And then also, last night, it was the moment he found out that he was being convicted, and now he's had the night to think about it. He had to sit there in court in a jumpsuit, different from the suit that he's been wearing previously, and he had to face the fact that he has now been sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his wife and son. So I certainly saw more emotion from him, I'd say.
I think prosecutor Creighton Waters did such a fantastic job in this case. And one of the things I will always remember is he was trying to draw the connection. And you talk about all the people that Murdaugh is accused of defrauding. And actually on the witness stand, he admitted. So I know we keep saying accused because technically he hasn't been convicted of those crimes, but he admitted on the stand to stealing the money. But anyway, I remember Creighton Waters saying, tell me what that conversation was like when you sat down with those clients. And he talked about, of course, Tony Satterfield, and talked about Hakeem Pinkney, and talked about the Plyer sisters from Columbia. What did you say when you looked them in the eye and you stole money? He couldn't remember. He couldn't remember those conversations, or at least wouldn't admit it. And then last night, and he was trying to say to the jury, listen, if he could look these people in the eye, people he cared about and respected and lied, he's lying to you too. But he said last night, right up here, when they came out, when Alan Wilson and Creighton Waters spoke, he said, you know what? I hope this is Alec Murdaugh's last con.
That is a powerful way to end it, certainly. And I think you're absolutely right. That was powerful, being able to go through and in excruciating detail. I mean, I think a lot of people were thinking that Waters was taking a long time up there talking to the jury, but I think that going through and pointing out every single time he's lied, asking him to recall the specific details. And Murdaugh up there on the stand saying, you know, I remember this case. I remember the people. I'm sure I lied to them either over the phone or in person. However, I don't remember the exact conversation. I think that really emphasized to the jury how many times he lied, how often he lied, and how routine it was, because he couldn't really recall a single detail of it.
It's so true. And when you talk about his lies, one of the sticking point of this case, Sam, the point that everything came down to was the lie about the last time he saw his family. If you want to talk about literally 6 weeks of testimony all coming down to that moment, that lie. And the problem with it is he didn't know until a year in that he wasn't going to get away from it. And, you know, I was telling Darcy, Sam, into this case, isn't it poignant, if you think about this, that in the end, it was his son who captured the video.
Oh my goodness.
And identified his killer.
Absolutely.
Now, you guys may not know this, but that kennel video wasn't unearthed from the Secret Service until a year later. It took them a year to unlock Paul's phone and find that kennel video. And I have no doubt, and Judge Clifton Newman said in his sentencing, he had no doubt, if that video didn't exist, Murdaugh would have kept up the lie that he never was at the kennels with his family at 8:44 and was not with Maggie and Paul minutes before they died.
Absolutely. I mean, think about how many people he lied to about that. Not only investigators in 3 separate interviews after the murders, but his family, his law partners, his friends, I mean, everyone. And so I think that video is absolutely what did it. And I was talking to people out here that were on the lawn after the verdict was announced, and I had multiple people telling me that they think that kennel video was pivotal in this case.
Yeah.
It was everything.
Really quickly, let's talk about the death penalty. I'm sure there are comments. We can't see them right now, but I'm sure people are saying, why isn't this a death penalty case? Well, that was a decision. You heard Judge Clifton Newman saying that your family, basically what he was saying is your family have prosecuted people and put people to death for less than the aggravated killing of your own wife and your own son. But the prosecution made the decision not to seek the death penalty in this case. That's the way it works. They sort of decide what they think they have the strongest way of getting a conviction.
Right. And now what I'd say, I mean, my take on that is when the jury is having to consider that they are, you know, potentially putting this man in prison for the rest of his life and saying that he is guilty of murdering his wife and son, that is a big decision. Then when you add the death penalty on that, I think that's a responsibility that, you know, goes even beyond the initial guilty verdict. So that personally didn't surprise me, but I know it's definitely a topic of conversation, especially after Judge Newman brought it up today.
And sometimes it's harder to get a conviction from a jury in a death penalty case. All right, I'm hearing from our producer. We're going to wrap right now on what we call the Big 19, but if you would like to keep watching us, we are going to be streaming live on our YouTube channel on WLTX Plus, and make sure to follow along at WLTX.com.
I feel like this verdict was something that was reached very quickly. I know that was something that, you know, talking to locals, talking to people here, it seemed like they would take a little bit longer. You know, I was surprised by that time, but, you know, that did come down. As far as inside the courtroom, I got to see some reaction and see some of those jurors. There were 10 jurors inside to see that sentencing for themselves, to see that through. Since they've been here 6 weeks in this trial. I also saw some reaction from the family. I was kind of surprised to see John Marvin was not crying when those 2 life sentences came down. He's been crying throughout several parts of this trial, and even on the witness stand, he was very emotional. He didn't show too much emotion in there in the courtroom just now. Buster, his facial expression, he looked very just depressed, hopeless. You know, he kind of had this glance like he didn't know what was next, you know. But it was a very intense scene there in the courtroom, hearing what that sentencing was like.
I want to ask you this because our viewers, we've all seen the jurors. Our viewers haven't gotten a chance to see the jurors. There was so much testimony, some of it very tedious. I know even listening to it myself, some of it I got lost in the minutia of the call logs and the pings and the radius and all that business. But watching the jurors' reaction, and I'd like you both to answer this, what were some moments in the courtroom that you really saw that the jury was reacting to the testimony?
Yeah, so first of all, I definitely saw the very first juror, who was then designated as, I believe, the foreman is what they're called. He was asking several times throughout the trial whether or not they could zoom in the screen, if he could see certain numbers, if he was not able to see just with the view of maybe someone blocking that screen. He was very adamant about actually getting that full perspective of what was being shown, of all that testimony. I also saw another juror when Alec was on the stand. It was the first day he was on the stand, and she actually pushed a tissue box toward him. Now, I don't know if that was maybe a Southern hospitality gesture, if that was something that she was genuinely concerned about him. But she did push that box forward, and Jim Griffin walked around, moved that box over to Alec.
Now, 2 moments that I really stood out to me where I thought the jury was, fully paying attention. One I mentioned last night was when the prosecution brought Ronnie Crosby, who's one of Alec Murdaugh's former law partners, back up on the stand. And then he was cross-examined by defense attorney Dick Harpootlian, and Harpootlian was fiery.
Right.
He was angry. He asked Ronnie Crosby if Crosby was angry with Murdaugh and therefore his testimony was biased. And it got very contentious between the two, even coming to Harpootlian asking Ronnie Crosby if he thinks that Murdaugh did it. So in that moment, I think the jury was absolutely perked up and paying attention. The other example would be the first time those autopsy pictures were shown. I certainly saw some emotion from the jury as they saw the wounds that the victims received. I think that was a hard moment in court.
Yeah, and I know from the prosecution, I've had a chance to talk with them. They felt that that was important just to show the brutality of these killings of both Maggie and Paul. So we are wrapping up our coverage now here at the Colleton County Courthouse. Alec Murdaugh has been found guilty on all 3 charges and is sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences. As you heard Judge Clifton Newman on the stand say, he is actually has several other pending cases. There are several other cases he's going to be involved in that have to be settled, including the Mallory Beach lawsuit, boat lawsuits, lawsuits from stealing money from clients. So he might even ended up being sentenced to more. So this is really a sad day, but the day many people were hoping for, to see justice done. And as Creighton Waters said, Alec Murdaugh has had his last con. Make sure to keep it tuned to WLTX.com for all of the latest.
Good afternoon. Is everybody ready? Okay. Give it just a minute. Everybody give me a thumbs up. My name is Mark Keel, and I'm chief of the South Carolina Law Enforcement Division, otherwise known as SLED. For those of y'all in the local media, you know I don't do very many press conferences. I've been chief of SLED for 12 years, and I've only done 2. The last one I did was in June of 21 to talk about significant violent crime that's just been unprecedented in our state. But today it's important for me to speak out. It's important because of the victims in this case. It's important because Maggie and Paul cannot. I want to make one thing clear to everybody. There are no winners today. I have a truly humbling responsibility as being chief of SLED. I lead a dedicated and professional group of investigators, forensic scientists, and support personnel. A staff that work day in and day out for days just like today to bring justice for victims. And today is not the end. It's the next step in a long road to justice for every person who has been victimized by Alex Murdaugh. Alex Murdaugh has now been rightfully found guilty of murdering his wife Maggie and Paul. He was found guilty because he was guilty. And as one of the witnesses said, Paul was a little detective. This case serves notice to anyone who aided or assisted Alex Murdaugh in committing any crime that justice will be sought. This was an incredible effort by SLED, our local and federal partners, and our partners at the Attorney General's office. And I want to thank Attorney General Wilson and all of his prosecutors, paralegals, and all of his support personnel as well. They did a fantastic job. The agents and prosecutors who worked this case have sacrificed countless moments from their own families to ensure that a person responsible for the murders of Maggie and Paul was fairly tried and brought to justice. The people who work this case do it because they are called to serve. They do it to bring a voice to the voiceless. And they're dedicated public servants. And for that, I'm grateful. SLED agents have worked tirelessly for the past 21 months to ensure justice was served for Maggie and Paul. It is impossible for most people to understand the countless hours of hard work that went into this case. Time away from families, missed birthdays, missed holidays, And it is all done under constant scrutiny, constant pressure. I want these folks standing behind me and around me to know how incredibly proud I am of him as Chief of SLED. I believe firmly in this criminal justice system that we have. And I believe in the rights of an accused to have a fair trial. That is why I have remained silent from beginning this case until now. Again, today, I'm here to provide a voice for Maggie and Paul. I'm here to recognize the heart-wrenching journey that family and friends of Maggie and Paul have endured. And I'm here to support and thank again this incredible team of agents, forensic scientists, support personnel that work at SLED and that worked on this case. Yesterday and today, justice has been served. Thank you.
Well, hello, guys. Thanks for being here still. I'm going to try to get all this stuff off of here. If you guys just bear with me. All right. So, hey, guys. Sorry for making you guys wait. I see 46 people stayed in there while the update was on. You guys are crazy. Second from the right lane. Okay, where is my 1B? Hold on a second. Let me check my map real quick. Hold on, guys.
You guys can see me now. Sorry about that. I'm trying to get to my event that I've got to go to. So we're driving. I just got done filming and filming with a film crew. And so now I'm making my way back over to the area so that I got to go. So I figure I just went on here to check to see if it was off, and it was not. So I figured maybe I need to pop on here, but since I realized it was off anyways, I figured what the heck. So we found out that he is guilty, and now he has been sentenced to the rest of his natural life in prison on these crimes. Now, because you never know what's going to happen on appeal. I mean, in all reality, just like any other court case, there is nothing guaranteed, nothing whatsoever guaranteed. So I don't know if I really want to go to the convention just yet. Oh, I'm getting here so late, but I had to meet the crew at 9 a.m. And then that was just a weird situation. But anyways, all right, guys. Well, thank you guys for this morning. We had some conversations related to this way. I need to find some place to park. Some conversations related to John Benet Ramsey, Brian Kohberger, as well as Alex Murdaugh. We heard his sentencing. Again, the judge was very fair, in my opinion, related to this case. I think he was, he did a good job. I think everybody in this entire case did an amazing job and couldn't be prouder. I'm glad people rose to the occasion. And, you know, we're just very fortunate that we do have the systems that we do. Continue straight, then turn right. Oh, wow. I was meaning to drive around, but I'm already here at the convention. I'm trying to decide whether I really want to go into the convention right now or not, because it's almost lunchtime and I almost think I would rather have something to eat first, but we'll see. Anyways, guys, I'm going to let you go while I try to find a place to park, and just know that I'm here. I brought my flyers. I'm going to be handing these out all day today, and tomorrow I'm not going to be able to. So I will talk to you later. I love you, each and every one of you, and God bless.